People think the end of the world comes with fire, earthquakes, or nuclear sirens. In my case, it arrived with a smirk that looked too much like my own. And worse, he knew every mistake I hadn't even made yet. It was supposed to be just another late night at the lab, the kind where the vending machine coffee tasted like burnt rubber and the hum of the servers felt louder than my own heartbeat. I was 24, one of the youngest scientists working under a contract nobody was allowed to talk about. They called it Project Helios, a name too grand for something that, in truth, felt like an accident waiting to happen. And then the accident happened. When the glow subsided, someone else was standing there. He was taller by just an inch, hair a little longer, jaw sharper. His lab coat was stained with burns I didn't recognize, as though he had just walked out of a war zone. His eyes, my eyes, locked on me with a look I'll never forget. Half grief, half wonder, and all too intimate. I should have screamed. I should have hit the emergency alarm. Instead, the only words that stumbled out of my mouth were, "You're me." He tilted his head, gave me that goddamn smirk, and whispered, "Not yet." The days that followed blurred into disbelief, security lockdowns, and whispered interrogations behind glass walls. But the truth stuck with me like a splinter in my chest. This wasn't some alternate universe or clone experiment gone wrong. This was me, 10 years older, sent back or pulled back by the very machine I'd been trying to stabilize. And he wasn't here to save me. He was here because I had failed. The government handlers wanted to dissect him, catalog his memories, strip him down to data points. But every time they pressed, he clammed up. Only when it was just the two of us, standing too close in the silence of the observation room, did he finally break. "You think you're building Helios to change the world," he said, his voice low, rougher than mine. "But you're building its grave. In my time, this machine tore open the sky, killed millions, still killing, and the only way to stop it is us." "Us?" I asked, though the way he said it already set something burning in my chest. He stepped closer, his hand almost brushing mine on the table. "If you don't love me, if we don't love each other, the cycle doesn't break. The machine feeds on patterns, on probabilities. It's coded into our existence now. Our bond is the only variable left that can collapse it." I laughed then, a brittle, nervous laugh, the kind that cracked halfway through. "That's insane. You're saying the fate of the world depends on me dating myself." He didn't flinch. His hand closed over mine, warm, steady, terrifyingly familiar. "Not dating, loving. There's a difference." The words lodged in my throat, refusing to move, because as much as I wanted to deny it, there was a strange pull between us, something I had felt the moment he appeared in that fractured light. He was me, but not me. He was the person I might become, scarred and stronger, and somehow unbearably gentle despite it all. And deep down, in the quietest part of my soul, I already knew I wanted him. The rest of the team thought I was cracking under pressure. They called it a stress reaction, a coping mechanism. Maybe they were right, because when the world starts ending and the only person who understands is literally yourself, how do you resist leaning in? One night, when the guards had finally left us alone in the lab, I asked him, "What happens if I refuse? If I can't give you what you're asking for?" He held my gaze, something fragile flickering in his expression. "Then you become me anyway, and you'll hate yourself for it." His words shouldn't have mattered, but they cut deep because I had always been afraid of becoming someone unrecognizable. And here he was, living proof of my own worst fear, and yet the only person who made me feel less alone. That night, for the first time, I didn't go back to my dorm. I stayed in the lab with him. We sat side by side on the cold floor, our backs against the humming machine that had dragged him here. The silence between us wasn't empty anymore. It was thick with something unspoken, dangerous, tender. And when his shoulder brushed mine, I didn't pull away. The hum of the Helios machine became a kind of lullaby that night. It filled the silence between us, but for the first time, it didn't feel oppressive. I remember the faint glow of the console lights casting shadows across his face. My face, but older, worn, and somehow softer in the quiet. He broke it first. You always bite the inside of your cheek when you're trying not to cry. You don't know you're doing it, but I do. My chest tightened. You sound like a stalker. He gave me the smallest smile. I sound like you. That's the problem. It was terrifying and grounding all at once. Sitting there with him. I kept waiting for the absurdity of it all to shatter the moment. But it didn't. Instead, I found myself leaning into the warmth of his shoulder. Our reflections blurred together in the polished steel panel across from us. For once, I wasn't just fighting the weight of my mistakes. I was staring at them, humanized, and I couldn't hate what I saw. The guards found us like that in the morning, me half asleep against him, his arm around me in a way that was almost protective. They didn't say anything, just exchanged a look that was half pity, half suspicion, before escorting me out. From then on, things changed. We weren't just two versions of the same person anymore. We were something the world couldn't define, and maybe didn't deserve to. During the day, I played the role they expected of me. The young scientist, dutiful, brilliant, endlessly dissecting equations on the board. But at night, behind the locked doors of the lab, I was just a boy pressed against the ghost of his future, trying to make sense of why my heart felt fuller than it ever had. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes we sat in silence. Sometimes, when exhaustion hollowed me out, he'd tuck the lab coat I'd left crumpled on the floor over my shoulders, and for a moment, I felt safe. Safe with myself. But safety never lasts. One evening, a woman from the oversight committee stormed in. Her heels clicked against the tile like gunshots, her clipboard tucked under one arm like a weapon. She looked at me, then at him, her lips curling as though she'd caught us mid-crime. "You're compromising the project," she said. Her voice was sharp, but beneath it I caught something worse. Calculation. "This attachment will not be tolerated." He stood in front of me before I could even move. "You don't understand. Without this attachment, there's no world left to tolerate anything." Her gaze sliced through him. "Spare me the paradoxes. We'll extract what we need from you, with or without cooperation." The chill that shot through me was bone deep. Extract. They weren't just threatening him, they were threatening to erase everything he was, everything I could be. That night, when the lab was ours again, I asked him the question I'd been afraid of. What happens if they succeed? If they take what they want from you? He hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything. "They won't stop the catastrophe," he said finally. "They'll accelerate it. They don't care about saving anyone. They care about control. That's why it has to be us, not them." I wanted to argue. I wanted to cling to the illusion that the people funding us, guarding us, knew what they were doing. But the truth was already unraveling, and his eyes, my eyes, held no space for denial. That night I kissed him. It wasn't planned, and it wasn't careful. It was desperate, messy, like the world was breaking around us and the only way to hold it together was to close the distance between our mouths. For a heartbeat he froze. Then he kissed me back, and everything I thought I knew about love collapsed. It wasn't like kissing someone else. It was like stepping into a mirror and realizing the reflection could love you back. His lips tasted like regret and survival, mine like fear and yearning, and together it became something neither of us had words for. When we finally pulled apart, breathless, he pressed his forehead against mine. "Do you see now? This isn't a choice. It's written into us." I wanted to tell him he was wrong, that we were making our own choices, that I wasn't just a pawn in some cosmic feedback loop. But the truth was, I didn't want to resist. Not anymore. We spent hours after that mapping out the machine's design, scrawling formulas across the whiteboards, piecing together fragments of timelines he remembered and I hadn't lived yet. Every equation ended the same: collapse, destruction, fire in the sky. The only variable that changed anything was us, our bond, our choices, our love. But love, as I learned, doesn't fix everything. The committee tightened security. They assigned armed guards to monitor us 24 hours a day. They installed cameras in the lab, in the corridors, even in the observation rooms. Every glance we shared was recorded, every accidental brush of hands catalogued. Our love wasn't just forbidden, it was evidence. One night, when we thought the cameras were blind for just a second, he pulled me close. His voice was fierce in my ear, almost a growl. "They'll try to use me against you. They'll tell you I'm lying, that I'm manipulating you. Promise me you won't believe them." I nodded, though my stomach nodded with doubt. Not because I didn't trust him, but because I didn't trust myself. Could I really put the fate of the world on something as fragile as love? The answer came sooner than I expected. A week later, the committee staged a demonstration. They forced him into the chamber, strapping electrodes across his arms, threading wires into his skin like he was just another component of the machine. I screamed, fought against the guards, begged them to stop, but they only pressed me harder against the glass. He looked at me through the barrier, pain carving lines into his face, and mouthed the words I'll never forget: "I love you." The machine roared to life, light pouring through the cracks, and for one horrific moment, I saw the future he had described. The sky torn open, cities burning, oceans rising in fury. And then it collapsed, the vision snapping like a rubber band, leaving me gasping against the glass. The committee was ecstatic. "It works," one of them said, scribbling notes furiously. "His presence stabilizes the output." But I knew better. It wasn't just his presence. It was ours, together. And that meant they didn't need him alive to finish the project. That night, as the guards dragged him back to his cell, I made a decision. If the world was going to end without our love, then I would fight to keep it alive. Even if it meant tearing down the very lab I had once worshipped. Even if it meant betraying everything I thought I stood for. Because somewhere in that chaos, I had learned a truth I couldn't unlearn. I didn't just want to save the world. I wanted to save him. And maybe, just maybe, save myself too. I used to think betrayal was something that happened quietly, with whispers in the dark and signatures on hidden papers. But betrayal, when it's your own, is louder than a bomb. The plan started small. A stolen keycard here, a copied passcode there. I told myself it was survival, not rebellion. But deep down, I knew the truth. I wasn't just saving him. I was breaking free from the very system that had raised me. I couldn't do it alone. So I reached out to the one person in the lab who had always looked at me with more humanity than suspicion. Dr. Monroe. She was older, in her 50s, her hair streaked with gray, and she had seen too many young men like me burned alive by their own ambition. "You know what they're doing isn't science anymore?" I whispered one night, sliding the schematic across her desk. "It's cruelty dressed up as progress." Her eyes lingered on the paper, then on me. "And you want me to risk my career, my life, because you've grown attached to him?" My throat closed up. "It's more than that. If they keep using him this way, they'll end the world. He's not lying, Monroe. I can feel it." For a long moment, she just studied me. Then she sighed, the kind of sigh that carried decades of disillusionment. "God help me," she muttered. "But I believe you." That was the first crack in the walls around us. The second came from him, my future self. He had always carried himself with a strange mix of weariness and defiance, like someone who had already lost everything and yet refused to stop fighting. But one night, when we managed to steal a moment without cameras, he showed me something else. Vulnerability. "They broke me once," he said, voice shaking as he traced the scars along his forearm. They'll try again. And the worst part isn't the pain. It's forgetting who you are in it. I took his hand, threading my fingers through his, grounding us both. Then don't forget this. Don't forget me. For the first time, he leaned into me instead of the other way around. His breath warmed my neck, and his words came out like a confession. You don't know how many years I prayed to feel this again, to love myself enough to believe I was worth saving. And God, the way my heart cracked open in that moment, I knew I would burn the whole world before I let them take him from me. We moved quickly after that. Monroe smuggled us blueprints of the lab's underground tunnels, relics from when the facility was a Cold War bunker. He studied them with the same intensity he once reserved for equations, pointing out the weak spots, the blind corners. Every plan felt impossible until I looked at him, and then it felt inevitable. But the world doesn't wait for love to bloom. The committee accelerated the project, pushing the machine into overdrive. They wanted results before Congress pulled the funding. That meant longer experiments, harsher treatments, less time for us to breathe. And with every test, I saw him fading, his shoulders slumping, his eyes dimming. I couldn't stand it anymore. The night before the final trial, I stole into his cell. The guard at the door lay slumped. Courtesy of a sedative Monroe had slipped me. Inside, he sat hunched against the wall, his head buried in his arms. "Hey!" I whispered. His head snapped up, eyes wide, and for a moment he looked so young, so much like me, that it hurt. "You shouldn't be here," he rasped. "Neither should you," I said, and dropped to my knees in front of him. "We're leaving. Tonight." He shook his head. "You don't understand. If we run, they'll hunt us. If we stay, they'll kill us slower. Either way." I kissed him to shut him up. It wasn't the desperate crash of lips we'd shared before. This was softer, steadier, filled with the weight of everything I hadn't said. His hands trembled against my cheeks, like he couldn't believe I was real. "We'll make it," I said against his mouth, "because I refuse to lose you, not when I just found you." For a long second, he just stared at me, his eyes glistening. Then he nodded once, sharp and certain. "Okay, let's burn this place down." We slipped into the tunnels at 2 a.m., the world above us humming with machines we no longer served. The air was damp, reeking of rust and mold, but every step away from the lab felt like a heartbeat closer to freedom. Halfway through the tunnels, the alarms blared. "They know," he hissed. I grabbed his hand, pulling him faster. Then we run. The tunnels erupted in chaos, boots pounding behind us, shouts echoing like gunfire. My lungs burned, but adrenaline kept me moving. He was right beside me, his grip iron around my wrist, his breath ragged but determined. We burst through a rusted door into the night air, stars stretching above us like a promise. For one blissful second, I thought we'd made it. Then the spotlight hit us. "Freeze!" a voice barked. Dozens of guards swarmed from the tree line, rifles raised. My heart plummeted. We were trapped. He stepped in front of me, shielding me with his body, and I realized with sick clarity that he meant to sacrifice himself. "No," I choked, grabbing his arm. "We do this together. Remember." His jaw clenched. "Then kiss me. Now." Confusion flickered. Then I understood. The bond. The one thing they couldn't control. So I kissed him under the blinding spotlight, with rifles trained on our backs and the weight of the world balanced on our lips. And something in the air cracked open. Not the sky this time, but the machine itself, resonating with the love we refused to hide. The guards faltered, some clutching their heads, others dropping their guns. The ground shook not with destruction but with release. It was as if the machine had been waiting, hungering, for this exact moment. When we pulled apart, the forest was silent. The guards lay unconscious, the spotlight dark, and in the distance the lab itself flickered, then went black. He exhaled, shaky and disbelieving. We did it. But I wasn't ready to celebrate. Because even in the quiet, I could feel it, the story wasn't over. The catastrophe wasn't gone. It had only changed shape. And the only thing I knew for sure was this: whatever came next, we would face it together. The first breath of freedom tasted like blood and rain. We didn't stop running until the forest swallowed us whole, branches tearing at our clothes, mud sucking at our shoes. My lungs felt like fire, but his hand in mine dragged me forward, unrelenting. By the time we collapsed against a moss-covered log, the only sound was our ragged breathing and the distant echo of sirens fading into nothing. "We're alive," I gasped. He gave a hollow laugh, his head tipping back against the bark. "For now. That's the problem with survival. It always comes with an expiration date." I shoved his shoulder weakly, though my chest ached with something closer to fear than annoyance. "You could at least try to celebrate. We just escaped the most heavily guarded lab in the country." His smile flickered, small and tired. "And they'll spend every resource hunting us. Don't fool yourself. This is just the beginning." The way he said it made me shiver because he wasn't guessing, he was remembering. We didn't sleep that night. Instead, we pushed deeper into the woods until dawn broke, golden light cutting through the mist. Somewhere a river rushed. Birds sang, oblivious to the fact that the world had nearly ended again. For the first time, I felt the strange ache of hope, raw, fragile, but alive. By the second day, hunger gnawed at us. Our lab coats were torn, our hands blistered, and I realized just how unprepared I was for survival outside polished walls and sterile equipment. He, on the other hand, moved like someone who had been here before. He found wild berries, fashioned a crude spear from a broken branch, even caught a rabbit with alarming precision. "You're scaring me," I muttered as he skinned the animal with quick, practiced motions. He shot me a sidelong glance. "You'll learn. You always do." The firelight later painted his face in warm golds and shadows. I watched him eat with quiet efficiency, while I fumbled with my share like a child. Somewhere between bites, his expression softened. "You hate this, don't you? The dirt, the blood." I swallowed hard. "I hate what it means, that this is our life now." His gaze lingered on me, steady and unreadable. Better than being a prisoner. Better than dying in a machine. He was right, and yet, my heart twisted with a longing I couldn't name. Not just for safety, but for something as simple as belonging. Our journey turned into a pilgrimage across a fractured America. Small towns with peeling paint and rusted signs. Truck stops that smelled of stale coffee and diesel. Faces that stared too long, as if they knew we didn't belong. We stole clothes from laundromats, hitchhiked on back roads, and once, in a burst of reckless defiance, he used a stolen credit card to buy us a cheap motel room. That night, in the dim glow of a flickering neon sign outside the window, I finally asked the question that had been eating me alive. "Do you ever wonder if this is wrong? Us?" His head turned on the pillow, eyes narrowing slightly. "Wrong how?" I swallowed. "We're the same person, at least technically. Doesn't that make this some kind of paradoxical narcissism?" Silence stretched between us. My cheeks burned. Then he reached across the space, his fingers brushing mine. "You think this is about vanity? About loving a reflection?" His voice was low, almost tender. "It's the opposite. It's about forgiveness. About learning to love the parts of yourself you always thought were unlovable. If we can't do that, no one survives." His words hit me harder than any equation or experiment ever had. I turned my hand, lacing our fingers together, and for the first time, I didn't feel shame. I felt whole. But wholeness was a fragile thing. By the third week, the government tightened its net. Reports crackled on stolen radios about fugitives from a classified facility, described only in vague terms but always with a warning, considered dangerous. Military checkpoints dotted highways. Drones hovered over cornfields. And always, the Helios project lurked in the background, a shadow we couldn't outrun. One evening, as we crossed the Mississippi under the cover of night, he stopped suddenly on the bridge. "They're going to find us," he said, his voice grim. "It's not if, it's when." I froze. "Then what do we do? Keep running until there's nowhere left?" His jaw tightened. "No, we end it. For good this time." I stared at him, horrified. "You mean destroy the machine?" "Yes." His eyes blazed in the dark. "We don't run anymore. We fight." The idea terrified me. I had spent years building that machine, pouring my brilliance, my pride, my entire identity into its circuits. To destroy it felt like destroying myself. But then I looked at him. The scars on his arms, the shadows under his eyes, the man I might become if I failed, and I realized I had already been destroyed once. This was my chance to choose differently. "Okay," I whispered. "We fight." We planned for weeks, sketching out routes on napkins, trading favors with drifters, stealing scraps of intel from discarded newspapers. He remembered the weaknesses of the lab, the codes they never bothered to change, the arrogance of men who believed they owned the future. Through it all, our bond deepened. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were building something. An unspoken vow sealed in every touch, every shared glance across firelight, every kiss stolen in shadows. One night, in an abandoned church somewhere in Kansas, I woke to find him watching me. His hand hovered above my cheek, as if afraid to touch. "What is it?" I asked, sleep thick in my voice. His eyes shone in the candlelight. "I'm scared. Not of them. Not of dying. Of losing this. Of losing you." I reached up, curling my fingers around his. "Then don't. Stay with me, whatever happens." His breath caught, and for the first time since I'd met him, he let his tears fall. The day we set our plan in motion, the world felt sharper, brighter, like it knew what was coming. We moved like ghosts through the city streets near the facility, blending into the chaos of protesters who had begun to gather. Rumors of government experiments had leaked, fueling outrage and fear. Amid the crowd, his hand found mine. We didn't speak, but the pressure of his grip said everything. We were walking into fire, together. The lab loomed ahead, a fortress of glass and steel under the watchful eyes of soldiers. The Helios machine pulsed within, visible through the reinforced windows like a heart too big for its chest. For a moment, doubt clawed at me. Could love really be enough to dismantle the monster we had created? But then he leaned close, his breath warm against my ear. "Trust me. Trust us." And I did. God help me, I did. We slipped inside under the cover of chaos, alarms wailing as protesters clashed with guards outside. Every corridor felt both familiar and alien, memories crashing into me like waves. The place where I had once scribbled equations. The corner where he had first appeared. The observation room where we had stolen our first touch of intimacy. Now, it was all just kindling for the fire we meant to set. The machine roared as we entered the chamber, its glow searing, hungry. He squeezed my hand one last time, then turned to the control panel. "This is it," he said. "Once we start, there's no going back." I nodded, heart hammering. "Then let's finish it." The chamber was alive with light. The Helios machine pulsed like a living thing, its coils glowing white-hot, sparks leaping into the air. The hum grew louder, a vibration that rattled my bones. Every instinct screamed at me to stop, to run, to cling to survival. But his hand on mine steadied me. "This is the moment," he said, his voice barely audible over the roar. "The one I failed. The one you can change." I stared at the control switch, my throat tight. "And what if I fail too?" He smiled faintly, a shadow of something both broken and hopeful. "Then at least I won't fail alone this time." I pulled him close, kissed him hard, and with our lips still trembling from it, we flipped the switch together. The world exploded. Not with fire, but with light. A blinding, endless light that swallowed everything. My body felt weightless, untethered, as if I'd been ripped from myself. I heard screams, shouts, alarms, and beneath it all, his voice, steady and clear. "Hold on to me. Don't let go." So I didn't. The light tore through timelines, unraveling threads of probability, collapsing futures that had burned the sky. Images flickered in front of me. Cities drowning, children running from flames, lovers torn apart in rubble. All of it splintering, dissolving. And through it all, the bond between us glowed like a cord of gold, refusing to break. Then silence. I woke on the floor of the chamber, smoke curling from shattered consoles. The Helios machine lay in ruins, its once pulsing heart dark and dead. My ears rang, my vision blurred. But the first thing I saw was him, sprawled beside me, chest rising and falling in ragged breaths. "We did it," I whispered, crawling to him. "God, we actually did it." His eyes fluttered open, and for once, they weren't clouded with grief. They were clear, steady, full of something I had never seen in him before: peace. "I told you," he murmured, voice hoarse but sure. "Together." I laughed through tears, clutching his hand like it was the last anchor I had. Around us, soldiers stormed in, weapons raised, faces pale with shock. The lab was collapsing, not physically, but politically, socially. The secret was out, the monster slain. The committee's power burned away with the machine. We were free. The days that followed blurred into fragments. Interrogations, hospital beds, headlines screaming about the fall of Helios. The government tried to bury the truth, but the world had seen too much. Protesters became heroes, whistleblowers turned martyrs, and slowly, painfully, the machine that once promised salvation was remembered only as a cautionary tale. Through it all, he stayed by my side. We weren't prisoners anymore. We weren't fugitives. We were something new. Two versions of the same soul, bound not by fate but by choice, by love. One evening, months later, we stood on a quiet rooftop overlooking the city. The sky stretched wide and unbroken, painted in the pinks and golds of sunset. For the first time, it felt safe to look at the horizon without fear of it splitting open. I leaned against him, my head on his shoulder. "What happens now?" He was silent for a long time, his arm tightening around me. "Now you get to live. You get to make choices I never could. Choices that don't end in fire." "And you?" My voice cracked. He smiled, soft and sad. "I already made mine. I came back to love you, to remind you that you're worth saving. If that's all I get, it's enough." Panic stabbed through me. "Don't talk like that." But even as I said it, I felt him fading. Not physically, yet somehow the tether between us was loosening. The paradox was correcting itself. With the machine destroyed, there was no longer any reason for him to exist in this time. "No," I whispered, clutching his shirt. "Please, don't leave me." He cupped my face in his hands, his touch steady even as his body trembled. "You're not losing me. I'll always be here. In you. And maybe, just maybe, when you finally love yourself enough, you won't need me to remind you anymore." Tears blurred my vision. "I don't care. I need you." His lips pressed against mine, tender, lingering, a promise carved into eternity. And when he pulled back, he whispered the last words I ever heard from him, then carry me forward. The next moment he was gone. Just gone. Grief hollowed me, but beneath it lay something else. Strength. The kind of strength he had carried all along. The kind that came from surviving the unthinkable and still choosing love. I rebuilt my life piece by piece, left the lab behind, taught in universities where young scientists dreamed big but didn't forget the cost of ambition, wrote papers not about machines but about humanity, and every day I tried to live as though he was watching, as though the future we saved depended on it. Maybe it did. Years later, I returned to that rooftop at sunset. The city below thrummed with life, unbroken, unburned. I closed my eyes, and for a moment, I swore I felt him again. Warmth at my side, fingers brushing mine. A presence that would never truly leave. I kept my promise, I whispered into the wind. I carried you forward, and in the silence that followed, I realized something. I had met the future version of myself in a secret lab. I had loved him, lost him, and in the process, learned the one truth he wanted me to know. The only way to stop the end of the world isn't through machines or equations. It's through love. And love, ours, had saved everything. The sunset burned brighter, and for the first time, I let myself believe. This was the happy ending. Not perfect, not painless, but real. Ours. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.